I served 22 years and 5 months in prison. I was given a life sentence at the age of 19 years old. And I served that time in prison, and that's where my life changed in a lot of ways. And on this, I remember sitting in prison, I practiced envisioning myself in different parts of the world. Because prior to prison, I never left my community. I stayed in South Carolina, never went outside of that state. So while in prison, part of me helping me cope and press through all of the challenges I was facing with a 3% chance of ever being free, I had to find some place where I found peace, not in my cell, but I had to close my eyes. So I used to envision myself being in Africa, in Saudi Arabia, Jerusalem, Egypt, and these places that had so much rich history that I had a part of. For 5 years, I've been home now, a total of 8 years. And a couple of years ago, I got a pardon, which allowed me now to travel internationally. My first trip was to go to Ghana to reconnect with the history of my ancestors and to be able to understand who I am, who I was, and where I come from as I move through this process. And what I call my personal commitment to self is healing, so I can model the way of what healing looks like for another Black man in this country who have lived in poverty and participating activities, who are descendants of slaves. How do we live in a manner that is healing so that we can show others how that looks?
That, my friends, is Mr. Lester Young with Path to Redemption. I'm cheating here a little bit because I got to interview him on the OG Spotlight, so there's a little bit of crossover going on. But man, I got fired up. He's got an amazing message of redemption, perseverance, and just personal growth beyond belief. And I'm sharing this with the L&M family because I believe it can spark some hope. Hope for people that are still entrenched and tied up with the chains that are keeping them from becoming the promise they're intended to be. Mr. Lester Young's story is amazing, and the way he walks in service is inspiring. So hopefully it'll light a fire in you to take some action or to keep doing the amazing things that you're doing for your people and for your community. Mr. Lester Young is a published author. That gentleman has put out multiple books, multiple works and resources for people to access and get going on their journey. And you know, it's kind of awesome to see amazing people putting stuff out there. And by the way, we have the Lean in Love audiobook that's now available. Find the link down there in the doodly-doos. We always want to recognize our patrons who have been behind us, supporting the effort. Anybody out there that is bringing something new into the world, you know how valuable it is and meaningful it is to be supported by folks. And so patrons, y'all, appreciate you very, very much. Time for the shout out. I want to show some love to Mr. Tats. If you haven't seen Tats, he's everywhere. He's on the YouTube, he's on the TikTok, on the Instagram, on the LinkedIn. He's got beautiful content, like really meaningful content for entrepreneurs. And the way he delivers it just makes it so like digestible, just makes me want more. Okay, I'm probably making Tats blush right now. So I just want to share the comment that he went out of his way to share about an experience that we shared. So Tats says, I just participated in the inaugural Emotional Bungee Jumpers community group with other professionals in the construction industry. I honestly did not know what to expect. I just saw that Jesse was cooking up something and was curious to see what it was. Thank you for trusting me, brother. I have to say it was a lot of fun. As advertised, it worked on listening skills, question asking, feedback skills, and above all, improving vulnerability and building trust. Because that's what it's all about, baby! I was impressed that you could improve those things while on a video call. So if those things are on your list to improve this year, then check it out. I can definitely see the value in the group. Tats, thank you. And yes, folks, Emotional Bungee Jumpers, it's a community of industry leaders working to build these powerful skills. You're invited to sign up. I will leave a link down there also so you can check it out. And maybe somebody you know might be interested in it or benefit from it, more importantly. So that's enough. Here we go on to Mr. Lester Young. Ooh, we're live, baby. What is going on, people? All you folks out there in the Omniverse. I'm here with my friend, Mr. Lester. Well, I don't know. Is it? Am I crossing a line, Lester, by calling you friend so early in the relationship?
Let's call it.
10-4. So here we are with the OG Spotlight. Folks, if y'all are out there, Facebook land, LinkedIn land, YouTube land, Twitter land, leave us a comment because we don't really know if you're there or not. If you don't, leave us a comment. Let us know where you're at. Tell us what you're up to. If you're snacking on lunch, if you're playing hooky, whatever it is, we just love to know that you're there so we can show you guys some love. And I'm here with Mr. Lester Young with Path to Redemption. Mr. Lester, how are you, my friend?
Man, I'm blessed. I'm extremely blessed, man. I can't complain. I appreciate you asking, man. Hope you doing.
Yeah. So I was stalking you a little bit on the socials. You and I connected via LinkedIn. So folks, if you're on LinkedIn, hit him up. Lester Young, he's making big imprint on the world with Path to Redemption. Mm-hmm. And I know there's a story behind that, and we're going to get into that. I want to learn more about it, and I want the audience to learn more about it. Mm-hmm. But folks, y'all already know the deal. The OG Spotlight is about highlighting OGs, people that are out there sacrificing their time, making an investment in the community to leave this world better than they found it. And Lester is absolutely one of those people. And so, Lester, I seemed like you were on a major trip not too long ago, like across the country. I mean, international trip. Yeah. How was that experience?
My first time, first I'll just tell you, your audience, blessings to you all. And again, thank you for giving me this opportunity to be on your platform. And hopefully what we share today is meaningful, inspiring and motivating for the audiences also listening now and catch the replay. As you know, Jesus, I served 22 years and 5 months in prison. I was given a life sentence at the age of 19 years old. And I served that time in prison, and that's where my life changed in a lot of ways. And on this, I remember sitting in prison, I always practiced but I practiced envisioning myself in different parts of the world. Because prior to prison, I never left my community. I stayed in South Carolina, Hilton Head Island in South Carolina. I never went outside of that state. Right. So while in prison, part of me helping me cope and press through all of the challenges I was facing in a prison with a 3% chance of ever being free, I had to find some place where I found peace, not in my cell, but I had to close my eyes. So I used to envision myself being in Africa, in Saudi Arabia, Jerusalem, these places and Egypt, and these places that had so much rich history that I had a part of. Right. So of 5 years, I've been home now, a total of 8 years. And a couple of years ago, I got my passport. Well, I got a pardon, which allowed me now to travel internationally. So my first trip was to go to Ghana to reconnect with the history of my ancestors in Ghana and to be able to understand who I am, who I was, and where I come from as I move through this process. And what I call my personal commitment to self is healing, so I can model the way of what healing looks like for another Black man in this country who have lived in poverty and participating activities, who are descendants of slaves. How do we live in a manner that is healing so that we can show others how that looks? So that's what that trip in Ghana was about, a 2-week trip, which was a phenomenal trip for me, man.
Yeah. So, okay. So you were locked up. Mm-hmm. In the way mentally, you just decided to set your mindset to envision yourself traveling the world.
Yeah.
Was that just an idea you came up with all by yourself, or did somebody recommend that? How'd you get to that?
I got to that through reading. There were several individuals inside of the prison. Some of those who were actually incarcerated with me, and then some prison chaplains. They were people who pushed me. I went to prison reading at a 7th grade level of education. So I had no desire to read or anything, but here I was sitting in prison with all of this time. Like I said, I mentioned I had a 3% chance of ever being free, 90% chance that I would die in prison. But someone told me to bet on myself, and that betting on myself meaning that I had to change the way I think. And understanding, and my mindset was the reason why I was in prison. It was my mindset led to behavior choices, led to the decisions. Here I was sitting in prison. So I had to reverse that. I had to stop focusing on changing my mind. And one of the books that really changed that for me was James Allen, As a Man Thinketh, So Is He. And then the book Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. A lot of these books that really opened a window for me to see the world through the lens of not trauma, pain, and incarceration, but see it through a lens of a person who has literally changed their mind and they could be able to experience true freedom. So I always tell people that before the South Carolina parole board granted me a parole after 22 years and 5 months, I was already free. And that freedom came through reading books and being able to envision myself, closing my eyes and envision myself in a place that gave me a sense of solace, to allow me to press through the years of incarceration.
Oh man, it's beautiful. So we got some people coming in. I want to highlight them. And then I got like a real question for you, like a selfish question, because it's just all about me, right? So we got Miss Christine Fuentes coming in from YouTube land. She says, "Hey, Jesse and Lester, looking forward to hearing your story." Man, she's awesome. Thank you, Christine, she's always super supportive. Then we got Mr. Joseph Gonzalez coming in from LinkedIn, says, "Bringing the boom." Yeah, like, have you seen any of his content?
No, I'm gonna follow him. I'm gonna follow him as soon as we get off.
Yeah, man, you got to hit him up. He posts videos and it's always like, bam, bringing the boom. He says, "One can be locked up physically, but it's our choice to lock ourselves up mentally. The mind is powerful." What do you think about that?
I'm a testament of that. For 22 years, I sat in a physical cell, but my first 3 years, I was in 2 prisons. I was in a mental prison. I was in a spiritual prison. I was in a physical prison. But when I started making these shifts in my thought process and taking ownership for the decisions and taking ownership for what I think and what I allow to come into my mind, I was able to break free of my physical prison. My mental prison, which I found true freedom. Even though I walked in those halls every day for 22 years of incarceration, I still found a different sense of peace, which has now brought me to this point in my life now. 8 years out of prison, I found freedom before I was actually free.
Yes. Mindset, ownership, 100%. That whole ownership thing for me, when it slapped me in the face and helped me realize, I was reading the book, Man's Search for Meaning, by Viktor Frankl. And there's a sentence in there that says, "There's a space between stimulus and response. And within that space lies our power to choose."
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I'm telling you, I read that sentence and I went from being a victim and everybody was against me and I got bad luck and all of this to like, oh, wait a minute. A lot of this is my fault. Like, I could change this thing if I take ownership of the thing. So that selfish question for a felon like me that wants to get his visa, that just recently got off paper, what are like the first 2 steps I should take?
You said for a person who has gotten off of paper, like, go and apply for it. Like, it was not hard. I went to my local post office and went online first and filled out the paperwork for my passport. And being that I was no longer on parole or probation and didn't have no fines or fees, that allowed me to go in and pay, I think it was like less than $200 or something like that. I was able to get my passport. And once I got my passport, it was now execution. I can visit the places that I always dreamed about visiting while I was in prison. So Ghana was my first trip. I'm hoping to go to Mecca, and then I'm going to Jerusalem. Then I'm going to Egypt in the next couple years. I'm going to hopefully Mecca or Jerusalem in August of this year. That's going to be my number one. Yeah. Go hang out at the Jordan River.
Oh man, that's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
So our sister Jordan Roberts says that is such a powerful line, and she's probably talking about life is a choice or the stimulus between, or a space between stimulus and response. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you for the support. And so you talked about, you were in there. It took you a couple years for you to take ownership and get your mindset right. You envisioned yourself traveling the world.
Yeah.
How did you make the leap from that to launching Path to Redemption? And what is Path to Redemption? What's the purpose there?
Path to Redemption, being that I went to prison for a murder. I ended up shooting someone over a drug dispute when I was 19 years old. Unfortunate person transitioned. They died. And in prison, my first couple of years, I was in complete denial. No one to take ownership, very callous, very insensitive to the actions. But because I come from a family of people who have faith, and my father, like, really, for those 3 years, he was always coming teaching me about God and encouraging me to fast and pray. So I started doing that. And one night I remember, Jesus, is that I was laying in the bed one night, man, and it came to a point where it's almost like I couldn't sleep, and God, like, woke me up, like, and I was, like, asking God for years to forgive me. And God was like, I have forgiven you, but you have to
Mm,
ask the person you have harmed to forgive you. And you have to take ownership for that. And you have to take ownership. Like, don't just surface, like, you got to really take that. So I remember waking up crying one night in my prison cell, and I had a cellmate, a roommate, and I didn't want it to really express that emotional side of me, but it was so overwhelming for me that I got up out of the bed and I went to the door, and it was inside of my cell. It was a small little door. I went and I kneeled down in a fetus position, and I started crying and
mm,
praying. And I remember asking God again, forgive me. And it's just like this voice came over and said, I've forgiven you, but you have to ask the person you have harmed to forgive you. And for
mm,
years, I wanted to erase that part of that memory, but it was in that part of that I now had to acknowledge this person. I had to call his name. I had to take ownership for that. And I remember saying to him, Gary, would you forgive me? His name is Gary. And I said, Gary, would you please forgive me? You allow me to do something with my life. I'll promise you, in this forgiveness, I would honor your life by doing the right thing. And this is where Path of Redemption came. Path of Redemption came as a vision I felt from God, and also a means of Gary releasing me and allowing me to live a life of redemption, and it's not living with that guilt and unforgiveness. I felt like Gary's spirit forgave me and allowed me to move on in a different way. So part of that promise to Gary and to God while in prison, even after prison, I will honor God's promise, but I'll also honor Gary's life by doing the right thing. So Path to Redemption was created to show men and women who are incarcerated that your only path to redemption, there's several things that you have to do. And one of those things that you have to do, you have to take ownership. There's no victimization mindset here. It's about taking complete ownership, understanding the power of forgiveness, which power of forgiveness brings about true transformation. But you have to move forward in that journey.
Okay. We got hashtag ownership up on the screen because, like, that seems to be the basis of the freedom of your mind and the freedom for you to contribute your gifts and talents into the
Yeah.
world.
It's easy to blame people, right? It was easy for me sitting in prison to blame people. It was easy for me to try my best to blame everyone for the reason why I was in prison. But the reality is I was guilty. I was in a place selling drugs, and I pulled the trigger, and unfortunately someone died. I blamed, and this is crazy, it was easier to blame the victim because I was like, they came to rob me for drugs, so it was justifiable, but it wasn't justifiable. I was dead wrong. And once I was able to break away and take that ownership, that changed my life. And to this day, I tell people, to this day, in this power of ownership, I not only have God has forgiven me, and I feel that Gary has forgiven me, but some of his family members, his brothers, his father, his sisters have forgiven me in this process as well. Right. So by me taking this ownership, it opened up a completely different world to me of forgiveness, not only asking God to forgive me, but also receiving forgiveness from those who I harmed years ago when I was a teenage boy. I now understand the power of someone forgiving me for something that I did selfishly harm someone that they love, and they have the strength to say, I forgive you, and I want to see you do well. That to me is power, but it only came as a result of ownership.
Okay. So we've heard a bunch about forgiveness from others, from those that we've harmed and impacted.
Mm-hmm.
How about forgiveness from yourself?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because I mean, I'm not making a plug for my book, but I am in
Come
a way.
on.
I wrote this book called The 5 Stages of Incarceration, and it's really a highlight of my 22 years of incarceration. And one of those stages is forgiveness. And there's 4 stages in this book that I mentioned: forgiveness from God, forgiving self, forgiving others who harm you, and seeking forgiveness from those you have harmed. But the hardest one for me was forgiving self.
Oof.
I had to go back. I had to go back to the younger version of me, because I shared this story with you. My mother died when I was 16. When my mother died, she died the night before. We had an argument that night, and she died the next day.
Mm.
So as a 16-year-old person who felt like his mother died, mad at him, I carried that guilt from 16 all the way to 25, 26 years old while I'm sitting in prison serving life. I'm still struggling with this. And I had to realize, going back again to ownership, I had to now be able to forgive me. And so that, follow me, so the 26-year-old me at that time could go back to the 16-year-old Lester to help him process guilt. Because we all have a period in our lives where we're stuck at something that was traumatizing or hurtful to us. We hurt and we got to go back. So that forgiving self was me forgiving my 16-year-old self for the harm that I caused it, right?
Mm.
So that I can be able to live more freer as an adult male, you know what I'm saying, moving through life now because I've learned to forgive me. I was able to get in this mirror and look at myself and say, I forgive you, Lester. I love you, Lester. All of these affirmations I was able to give through this beautiful gift that God has given all of us. That's self-forgiveness, forgiveness from him, forgiveness from others, and to be able to forgive those who have harmed you.
All right, folks, if you're watching this on the replay, pause and rewind that because that's powerful, Lester.
Yeah.
So is this your first book, your last book? Where are you at on this
I'm on
authorship?
my fourth book right now, and
Yeah.
I'm on my fourth book, and it's like the beauty of it is I'm only sharing what I know. I share and teach what I know and what I've survived. I survived 22 years of incarceration.
Yeah.
I survived the hellish prison of guilt. I teach that. I teach mindset. So in all of my books that I've written is about the things that I have went through in order to get out of it. So like one of my books called How Did I Transform 5 Stages of Growth is how did I transform my life while serving life. And how did I transform my life while serving life is that the first stage of that is healing from my past pain. See, a lot of us can't really grow into the people that we are destined to be because we're still living in that cage of past pain. And in that cage of past pain, we have not found our voice. So in order for growth to come about, you have to heal, and through healing, you found your voice. So right now, you and I on this call today is because I healed. And the second stage of that growth was now I found my voice. And that voice now leads to my mindset, now leads to my purpose, now leads to my gift. You know what I mean? So those are the stages and how I transform my life while serving life, that now in this pain, I've healed. I found my authentic voice. And now because of that, I have a purpose and I want to leave this world in a different way. I want to know that when I walk away from this life here, I have left my fingerprint on someone else's life, that I've made an impact on that life.
Oh man. Yes, that is what I'm talking about. So Jordan, you're getting people fired up, Lester. She said, I agree. Forgiving yourself is one of the hardest parts, even after you have absolution from others.
It is.
I too have struggled with that. I've dealt with addiction for a long time. Every arrest I have is directly connected to my consumption of alcohol. And I'm grateful for the grace I've received because I didn't get caught for everything I did, right? Like, but I had to come to a point where I got outside of to forgive myself so that I could, like you said, find my voice, be the most authentic me I'm prepared to be right now at this moment. But I had to get that little voice right here on the shoulder that kept saying, don't forget. Remember when you did that? Remember when you were doing dirt? Like letting that go was the most difficult thing for me.
Yeah.
And so you've got several books, 5 books out. I bet you got a bunch more coming.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's not the only way you're serving the community and helping people, is it?
No, it isn't. Going back again to I teach what I know. I teach what I survive. I teach what has allowed me to be the man that I am today. So I do coaching. I do coaching for those who are formerly incarcerated, those who are walking out of prison and wanting to start life over again, but don't know how. And because of that, they find themselves going back and forth to prison and recidivism, going back to prison in this form of recidivism, right? So my goal is to use my expertise as a person who walked out of prison 8 years ago, have received a full pardon by the state of South Carolina, who has become an author, who has become a business owner, who has started several businesses, who is a homeowner, an investor and all that stuff. I want to be able to teach other individuals how to really understand what second chance means. And why I'm doing this is because walking out of prison, I realized that there were not enough me in the world, meaning that there were not a lot of people with lived experiences to be able to help someone else. Most of the people I talked to and I shared ideas with, or that I was seeking assistance from, there were people who may have had book knowledge, but didn't really have a true understanding of it. And because of that, they wasn't able to empathize or understand the challenges I face. So in this, I do professional coaching with individuals, group coaching, and individual coaching. I also do second chance hiring, understanding diversity and inclusion, helping organizations understand the value of why it's so important to hire someone with a felony conviction. Not only when you hire them, but what are some of the things that your organization can do? And that is through providing life coaching for these individuals, financial literacy, helping them develop a budget, how to maintain steady employment, understanding emotional intelligence, all of these things that you and I have applied and allowed us to be on this trajectory of success. But also I do like pardon clinics because I received my pardon 2 years ago here in South Carolina. So what I do, I help people here in South Carolina get their pardon. So we have gotten over 200 people applications submitted to South Carolina Pardon and Probation Parole to apply for pardons. We also assist with forklifting certifications.
Yes.
And the forklifting certification came as a result. As I said, I teach what I know and what I've experienced. By me having a forklift certification, it opened a door for me to get a job at Tyson Foods, right? So I realized that if I could help someone not only get a forklift certification, that can open up a door for potential employment. And in that, once you get that job, now let me coach you through how do you maintain that job. So I was able to leave Tyson 3 years after my release from prison and went on to do my own stuff around my business model, right? But it was a blessing to go back to Tyson headquarters and share some of the best practices I learned as an employee of the organization so that company can become better. So I teach what I've went through to be able to empower and educate others so that they can continue to create this model of success.
Okay. So when did the idea of starting your own business, when did that happen?
Inside of prison.
So you knew then?
Yeah, I knew in prison that I wanted to start my own business, because going back again to me doing a deep introspection and reflection on what led to the bad behavior choices. One, it was because of lack. I wanted to make money, so that's why I chose drugs. Drugs was something in my community. Yep. So knowing that I wanted to be a person that ran his own business, but I didn't have the tools or the gifts. So sitting in prison, I came across a book on marketing. And I read this book, this big, thick book about marketing. I was like, damn, I was doing some of the same stuff that people do that go to college for. I was doing the same stuff, right? In the community. So I started learning about entrepreneurship, and I started buying books on entrepreneurship. And then I started teaching classes on entrepreneurship in prison. Like, how do you start a business up with $500 to $1,000 after incarceration? And that's something simple. So that that class started growing and high demand for it. When I got out of prison, I had the knowledge. Now I'm like, okay, I'm going to start this business. So I started a power washing business. Something I saw a guy power washing the concretes in prison. I've never forgot that idea. I wrote it down. And when I came home from prison, I bought a power washer for less than $300 when it got an LLC. And I went to YouTube and I started learning how to pressure wash, because I never pressure washed. YouTube gave me all of the skills that I needed, jumped into some Facebook groups on how to power wash. And from there, I was able to scale that $500 investment to $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 investment. Return on my investment by me knowing how to market, because I did it in the illegal way. I learned how to do it in a legal way now through using Facebook ad, all of that stuff. So now I was able to give a true testimony to the men in prison, that when I go back, I'm like, I now can not only teach you the understanding of the fundamentals of business, but now I can show you the practical application of how to start a business after imprisonment, and even use that working, get a job full time, and do that on the side. So I didn't have a truck. I had a car. I had a Ford Fusion. I stuffed all my buckets and stuff inside of this car. and I would go and pressure wash a house after I got off work. And the people would call. I'm like, I'm busy. We backed up right now, but I can get your house and maybe at 4:30. I get off at 4 o'clock. They give me 30 minutes to get to your house. I never told them that I was had a full-time job and doing it on the side, but that's what I needed to do to be able to create that financial freedom for myself, but also be able to just get in the game of understanding entrepreneurship.
Yeah, learning it, right? Figuring it out. How do you communicate? How do you market? How do you message? I'm a baby. I just started about 8 months ago, and I could have read and read and read and read, but it's through doing that I learned the best. And one thing that you're saying that I hope folks out there in the Omniverse that are like tuning in right now, and also on the replay, is you have built an amazing business, an amazing life of service, and it's solely based on your personal experience in the world. It is time for the commercial break. You already know the deal, and if you're new, welcome, and we're glad to have you. Check out the Backstage Pass YouTube playlist. You're going to get a lot of life lessons that our previous guests have shared over the last year, 2 years. Lots of great stuff there. So digest it, consume it, and share it. And I want to invite you to hook up with the super amazing crew that go by the name of the Emotional Bungee Jumpers. Yes, it is as fun and as scary as it sounds, but it's also intended to help us build our leadership skills, build our communication skills. And you're going to be hanging out with a group of industry professionals who are actively upskilling, leveling up their game so that they can serve in deeper and more meaningful ways, particularly focused on listening, asking questions, and connecting in deep ways. So hit the doodly do, like Mondo 2.0 says. Down in the show notes, there's going to be a link for the Backstage Pass, and there's going to be a link for the Emotional Bungee Jumpers. Hit it up. And here we go, back to the show.
Absolutely.
It's, again, based on your personal experience. So what I'm hearing is your teaching, your coaching, your business consulting isn't based on a theory that you studied.
No.
It's based on what you lived.
What I've lived. Like I get the question all the time, like, how do you find your purpose? I said, what have you survived? All of us have went through something traumatic, challenging. And in that we survived it. Yes. And in that survival, that is a purpose. Now you could take that and now give it back to someone else. So I don't go out and try and reinvent or create something I don't know. This is natural for me. Speaking is natural. Coaching is natural. Whatever I'm doing is a natural thing because I lived it, right? I've gotten some education along the way, but this is natural for me. This is my purpose. This is my gift. And this is what I'm supposed to release into the world. So when we look at 2.5 million people in our world today, in our society in the United States, are incarcerated. We look at over 70 million people in our society living with a felony conviction. We have over 100 million family members have someone incarcerated. And then we look at the businesses that are second chance hiring companies, right? So why do I need to reinvent something? I can teach a business how to create best practices in hiring, engaging with people with felony convictions. I could help the 2.3 million people in prison. I could write books like this to be able to send into the prison to educate them, right? I can teach prison staff on some of the best practices in how you best serve people in prison. There's so many, I call it the vertical growth. From my experience, I teach in a vertical way so many lessons, so many things come from that 22 years of incarceration experience. And that's what makes any individual, once you know who you are and what you have survived, you take that, you package that, you create a model for that, and you be able to sell that into the world and give it into the world.
Yeah, contribute into the world. So you get people fired up here, Lester. We got Mr. Basim Kufu says, you're dope, bro. You're absolutely right about that forklift certification. That was his initial introduction to higher paid work. Thank you, Basim, for contributing your comments, my friend. And then Christine, she's like, dang, he got multiple income streams.
Yeah. From that one pain point, the thing you survive, That's your purpose. That's your gift. You can create in a vertical way multiple ways to impact the world. So from one book, I've created a workbook. I've created a facilitator guide. I've created a certification program with that from that experience. And it's me giving back forklifting class certification. I can teach how to get this forklifting certification, but in that I can now coach you. Once you get the certification, let me teach you what do you need to do to work in, how to elevate yourself in the workspace after being in prison for many years. I know that because when I got out of prison, 22 years out of prison, I did not know how to navigate the workspace. A lot of mess up. And I've seen a lot of people lose jobs after prison because of their mindset wasn't there. They didn't know how to navigate the pitfalls of the workforce because for 20 something years or whatever amount of years, they only worked in a prison environment. So I now can help teach you what you need to do to survive and thrive in the workspace, but also start off at an entry level in that job and elevate yourself in that company if you do these particular things. And one is changing your mindset and being hungry for better opportunities for yourself.
Yeah. And there's something about doing dirt, right? Being out there running wild, doing the thing, whether you got caught or not. There's some lessons that I've learned and I've applied to get something out of the world. The problem back then was I wasn't giving anything back.
Yeah.
I was continue to take and take and take, and it was never enough.
Yeah.
That's it. Those same learnings, those same little tricks and cheat codes, I still use them today, but I use them to contribute. And so for me, the biggest monumental difference is the depth of fulfillment that I experience from that. How's that? Is it similar for you?
I'm thinking about several things when you're talking about giving. Paying it forward is truly the blessing, the cheat code that a lot of people don't understand. Like you have to understand that it's not about you. You have to give more to be able to receive more. And my mentor, a guy named Chaplain Patoka, he always taught me the law of reciprocity. He's like, just give whatever someone just give and it'll come back. It, like the saw, the reciprocity saw, it just goes. He said, continue, just give what you can. And whatever you need, the universe will produce for you. Right. That was one lesson. And I remember living after I got out of prison, I continued that. I didn't, when I was looking for employment, I didn't like get down on myself. I started going to homeless shelters and started donating my time while I was seeking for employment. Right. I wanted to balance that. I didn't want to be like, give me a job, world, but I wasn't giving anything out. So I started like doing, going to the homeless shelter, feeding. Then I started doing in the wintertime, raising funds to buy socks, sleeping bags, hats, scarves, and stuff like that for the people who did not have any shelter. And then I started giving my service. And that's how it is, the law of reciprocity, giving back. And I think about two books, right? And I'm right in front of me right now, The Go-Giver by Bob Barger, The Go-Giver. And then I'm thinking about Joe Polish, his book called, I'm shouting them out, that says, What's in It for Them, right? Another good book. These are like books that I read, man, because it's about not being selfish about what you have, but how can I continue to make an impact in the world? And you find that those who have acquired a large masses of wealth, their goal is to give that wealth away before they die because they know they can't take it with them. So you got guys like Steve Jobs, you got all of these Warren Buffett, they have major foundations that is giving back to the world. And that's when entrepreneurs, particularly those who have been takers, you've been a taker, you harm people and you destroy communities. Your service should be is how can I give back in between as you're seeking to receive. You give more, you receive more. When you're taking, you're never going to receive that which you want. So those are the things that I've learned in prison and just me do my personal development, reading books, as I mentioned, The Go-Giver, What's in It for Them. These various books about how to continue to build social capital is finding ways to give back to someone else.
That's it, man. I will attest to what you're saying. Joseph says, define your give in order to find your why.
Yeah.
I think that's a solid saying there.
Yeah.
When I'm working with folks with the one question I ask myself when I'm kind of stuck on putting a proposal together or helping somebody out, helping a group out, the way I get unstuck is I say, okay, how can I be generous in this request or in this ask?
Yeah.
And for some reason, man, I ask that question and boom, it becomes super clear. Okay, but this is the thing. This is what they asked for. And I'm going to offer and contribute this too. And man, I'm going to tell you, every time I do that, it's like magic. The doors just open and we keep on trucking.
That's that golden rule. That's a cheat code. It's like when you're a service provider, when you're providing a service, it's not about, okay, I get paid for this, but how can I go beyond what is paid to give you more value?
That's it.
And that's what it's about. It's like, I want to add, like, yeah, I have to get paid for my time, but I'm going to over give this to you. Like right now, you and I having this exchange. I could easily come on this call and say, hey, man, I'm just going to give the bare minimum. Right. But that's not the intention. My intention is to maximize everything that I have so that at the end of this call, I've added more value than may have been expected, because I'm not looking to receive some check, or I'm looking to only make impact. Right. Yes. And that's what it's about. So when I'm in these business proposals, I'm always like, this is my number. But if you know who I am, you know that I'm coming with 10 times more that number in my time, my energy, and my commitment, and my compassion, and also that my empathy for who's in the room as I'm building this out with you.
Amen, my man. Look at that. We got Basim says, give back while you're looking and asking the universe for something. I've never heard that one in that way. That's good food for thought.
That's a game changer, brother. That's a game. Giving. Not while you like giving, like find somewhere that you not taking a picture while you're giving, but literally giving. Like I did when I got out of prison, I did it. That's all I did. While I was looking for a job, I'm like, let me serve people. I'm still serving people, and that service, things produce in different ways that allow me to grow in the blessings I have. Like people say, man, you've been home 5 years. How was you able to get a pardon your first time? I got a pardon my first time because I was a servant to people.
Yes.
Right. And I had a violent crime. I was convicted of murder in South Carolina. That's not something normally happens with a person so people will say, hey, I want to get a pardon. And I'm like, what are you doing in the community? What are you doing giving back? How are you serving the community? You've been a taker. You went to prison. Don't feel entitled because I've served the time that now I'm home, that I'm entitled to receive these things. No, how are you going to serve the people or the community that you harmed in the past? What you going to add to rebuild that community? That's the thing I always challenge people. Before you apply for something, how are you serving the people?
Yeah, that's it. We've all been blessed with gifts and talents. I believe our responsibility is to share that with the world.
Absolutely.
Like that's been my recipe. So I got the little streaming banner down there on the bottom, says pathtoredemption.org. Yeah. How else should people get a hold of you, Lester? If they're looking,
say follow me on LinkedIn, like we are right now on live on LinkedIn. Follow me on LinkedIn, follow your page, and connect with you as well. And just go to my Path of Redemption and see some of the stuff there that we're doing in the community, and see how you can get involved in some of the work that we're doing. We're always looking for donations when it comes down to providing for pardons here in South Carolina, or just finding ways that we can continue to elevate each other's work that we're doing.
10-4. So you got any OGs you want to shout out there, Mr. Lester?
Oh, I would shout out my OG. My OG would definitely be Chaplain Patoka, Jared Patoka, who's still a prison chaplain at here in South Carolina at Kershaw Correctional. Shout out one of my big homies. David Brown was a person who was very instrumental in my life. When I went to prison, he challenged me. He pushed me. He was like, because you was given life don't mean that you need to accept that. He was the ones that shoved books in my face and tell me to read it. Don't leave out of the cell until I finish this chapter in the book. So I'm going to shout out my big homie because he invested in me. He didn't want me to make the choice because I had a life sentence. He was like, you need to be different. That's the only way you're going to survive prison, not to be a part of the crowd, but step out and be your own person in the crowd. So I shot those two individuals. Most importantly, too, again, my wife, Felicia Young, who's definitely been the OG, who's hold me down during my incarceration. And even after I got out of prison,
wow.
We met like 7 years before I got out of prison, and she was committed to helping me become a better person. And to this day, we've been married now, 15 years. And so I'm going to shout her out too, because she's holding me down in some of my dark days, So
Yeah,
yeah,
because they're going to come.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this will close with Joseph Gonzalez says the physical being will recover, but to maintain a focused and driven mindset while incarcerated is a true testament to the power of our mind.
Oh, absolutely, bro.
No.
I love it.
He said it. Huh? He said it.
I need to go back and write that. I'm going to give you credit for that one, Joseph.
It
I love that. I'm going to use that quote, brother.
Lester, I appreciate you, man. You brought it. You gifted us with all your passion and your knowledge and expertise. Folks out there, hit them up. If you know somebody that's in the situation, that's looking for a pardon, that's looking to get up on their feet after spending some time behind bars, or if they're just stuck, is it a necessity that I be locked up in order to access your support?
No, because like I said, some of you may not have been in the physical prison, you're in a mental prison. And those things that I've done to escape the physical can help you get out of your mental prison as well.
Boom. There you go. So if you know anybody in a mental prison,
ready to break out.
Let's break them out, man. All right, y'all. We're going to wrap it up. Y'all be cool. We'll talk at you next time.
Be blessed. Peace.
Oh my goodness. You're either driving down the road or just so enthralled with this whole podcast that you went all the way down to the very, 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 very end of it. And we appreciate you. And we're going to take this as an indication of your dedication. So we got a little special request of you, a call to action, because everybody tells us that you need to have a call to action. So here's the call to action. Be kind to yourself. Go out there and share a smile with someone.